It's time for Fresh Oil with singer-songwriter and pastor Keith Manley, a program designed to minister the gospel of God's grace and to bring fresh oil to the brokenhearted. And now, with today's program, Pastor Keith Manley.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Fresh Oil. We're in a series that I've entitled The Silence of God. And we've walked through the silent centuries between the Old and New Testaments. We sat with Joseph in a prison. And yesterday we were hidden in the caves with David. Today I want to take you to one of the most agonizing silence periods in the entire New Testament, because today we're going to talk about Lazarus. And more than Lazarus, we're going to talk about the message that was sent and the silence that followed. Because the story of Lazarus is not primarily a story about a resurrection. It's primarily a story about the 4 days before that resurrection. And those 4 days of silence, of unanswered prayers, of death advancing while Jesus seemed unmoved. Those 4 days are the spiritual biography of half of the people listening to this program right now. You see, John chapter 11 opens with one of the most piercing sentences in the Gospels. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, and the message they sent is not a request. It's an identification. They said this, "Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick." They don't say, "Please come." They don't say, "We need you." They simply describe the situation, and they remind Jesus of the relationship. He whom you love is sick. And they trust love to do the rest. And then John records what I consider one of the most startling sentences in the entire New Testament. It's verse 5 and 6. It says this, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was." Did you catch the word? So because he loved them, he stayed. Because he loved them, he delayed. Because he loved them, he let the silence continue, and he let Lazarus die. And here's my first point today. The delay is not the denial. Jesus did not stay because he didn't care about Lazarus. He didn't care about Mary or Martha or their feelings. He stayed because he cared, in a way that was deeper than Mary and Martha could ever comprehend. They were praying for healing, but he was preparing for a resurrection. And you can't have a resurrection without a death. Let me take the surgeon illustration that I used on Monday and flip it on its side, because Monday's surgeon was working in silence on an existing patient. Today's surgeon has a different scenario. I want you to imagine a family rushes their father to an emergency room with a serious but a really dreadful condition. And the surgeon examines him and he makes a decision that shocks the family. He sends him home. And then he says, "Come back in 4 days." The family is horrified. 4 days? He needs help now. He's not going to make it. And the surgeon simply says, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." 4 days later, they come back and they discover that the surgeon used those 4 days to assemble the greatest team of specialists in the country. And he upgraded the operation theater. He arranged for a procedure that will not just cure the original condition, but will eliminate 3 other problems the family didn't even know existed. See, the 4-day delay was not negligence. It was elevation. He was not treating a symptom. He was engineering a complete healing. And that's what happened with Jesus. Jesus was not slow. He was assembling a resurrection. Now, I want to stay here for just a moment because I think we rush past the most theologically significant, emotional moment in the Gospel of John. When Jesus arrives and he sees Mary weeping and the Jews weeping with her, verse 33 says, "He groaned in the spirit and was troubled." The Greek word here, it's a word that means he felt a polite sadness. It means he was deeply physically moved. It can mean to snort with indignation, to be shaken from the inside. It's a violent emotion. This is not some gentle pastoral sensitivity. This is the Son of God encountering the full weight of human grief, and he's being shaken by it. And then in verse 35, the shortest verse in all of the Bible, it simply says, Jesus wept. Just 2 words in the English language, 1 word in the Greek. He shed tears. He cried. The eternal God, clothed in human flesh, stood at the grave of his friend, and Jesus wept. And here is the second point today. God is not unmoved by your silence. The Bible tells us he's touched by the feelings of our infirmities, by our weaknesses. God's not unmoved by your silence. His silence toward you is not the silence of indifference or distance. It's the silence of a God who's so deeply in your grief that he weeps with you, and while he's preparing you for the resurrection that you can't even see. He's not watching your pain from a comfortable distance. He's standing at the tomb, and his cheeks are wet. Let me give you an illustration to kind of bring this home. A father is driving to the airport to pick up his son who's been away at war for 18 months. He doesn't know the exact arrival time. He sits in the cell phone parking lot, and he waits, and he waits. An hour passes, then 2 hours, and he's getting nothing. No texts, no calls, no updates, just silence. But in the terminal, his son is going through customs. He's going through baggage claim. He's navigating the chaos of a late arrival at the airport. He's not ignoring his father. He's fighting through every obstacle to get to him. And the father in the parking lot, though he has received nothing, is not worried because he knows his son. And he knows the relationship, and he knows he is coming. And that's the way it was. Jesus was not ignoring Bethany. He was fighting through the cosmic obstacle of death itself to get to Lazarus. And he arrived at exactly the right time. Not Lazarus' time, not Martha's time, not Mary's time, his time. God's perfect timing. I want to sit with Martha's first words to Jesus, because they are the words that every person in a silent season eventually prays. She says this, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And she's probably right. If you had been here. That is the prayer of the abandoned. That is the prayer of the person in the hospital room who's prayed and watched the monitors flatlined anyway. That's the prayer of the couple who's fasted and sought God for their teenage son or teenage daughter and watched them go in a way of the prodigal. That's the prayer of a couple who has sought God, but they still signed the divorce papers. Lord, if you had been here. And I want you to notice what Jesus does not say in response. He does not explain himself. He does not give Martha a theological lecture on divine sovereignty and God's perfect timing, on providence. He doesn't say, actually, Martha, I was here, just in a different sense. He says, your brother will rise again. And when Martha responds with orthodox theology, she says, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus says something that shatters every category she has. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Not I will bring the resurrection, not I have power over the resurrection, but he says, I am the resurrection and the life. And here's the third teaching point today. When Jesus answers the silence, he doesn't just answer the questions, he becomes the answer. He doesn't just explain the silence, he fills it. I had a friend once say, when I get to heaven, I've got all these questions I want to ask God about why, but when I get there, they won't be important anymore. See, he fills the need. He doesn't just bring the miracle. He is the miracle standing right in front of you, calling you to believe. Now, Lazarus, he had been in the tomb for 4 days. In Jewish tradition, the rabbis believed that the soul hovered near the body for 3 days. And the biblical tombs had a little window. It was like a porthole for the soul. But by the 4th day, they believed it was truly gone. Decomposition has begun now, and there's no natural hope remaining. What did Jesus do? He waited until there was no natural hope remaining. And then he went to work. Because he was not interested in demonstrating that he could do almost impossible things. He was interested in demonstrating that he can do what only God can do. If you've been in a tomb 4 days, if the situation has gone past the point where anyone believes it can turn around, that's precisely the moment Jesus is walking towards your stone. He can speak words of resurrection and bring hope back into your situation. I've been to that tomb years ago where Lazarus was buried and laid in the ground. And you go down these steps. It was a long way down. I looked inside of it, and I could just imagine Lazarus hopping up those steps in his mummy wraps all around his body, because he would have been wrapped with grave clothes. And sometimes I think we're that way in the spiritual realm. We've been wrapped with our grave clothes and the doubt and the fears and all the things that have entangled our mind because we don't see the answer in the way we expect it. And God has to loose us from those grave clothes. Your name is in that voice. I love he said, Lazarus, come forth. If he would have just said, come forth, every tomb would have opened up and every grave would have popped open. God speaks your name. Your situation's in that command. And he who is the resurrection and the life is not finished with your story. God has an answer for whatever you're going through today. And he wants to resurrect your story. Your final chapter has not been written yet. Jesus has a plan for your life. Friend, if there's anything I'm fanatical about, if there's anything I might go overboard on, I believe that God is sovereign. And I believe that he orchestrated you to be listening to this program today. Let me pray for you. Father, for everyone listening today who's been saying that prayer that Mary said, that Martha said, Lord, if you had only been here, my brother would not have died. God, I ask you to speak to them today, not to explain the silence, not to make an excuse for what they've been through, but to fill it, to fill the silence with your hope and your mercy and your grace. Stand at their tomb today. Call their name, Lord. Roll away whatever stone has sealed their hope. In the name of Jesus, I believe you today to do a miracle. Friend, I thank you so much for tuning in today to Fresh Oil. Tomorrow we're going to finish up the week, and I'm going to be talking about, an amazing point of silence found in God's Word. We're going to be talking about the 7 seals and the silence of the unopened book. I just finished writing a book about those 7 seals and the day when Christ is going to return. And I am looking forward to tomorrow's message. Whatever you're going through today, whatever silence has entered your life and tried to make you doubt that God has your best interest at heart, I'm here today to remind you that he loves you with an everlasting love. And whatever you're going through today, friend, it's temporary. He's going to call your name, and you're going to come forth, walk in grace.
Thanks for joining us today for Fresh Oil with Pastor Keith Manley. Fresh Oil is an outreach of Grace Family Church in Rockford, Illinois, and can be heard each weekday at this same time. You can reach us online at weneedgod.com. Until next time, remember, God's love for you is unconditional, and He makes His mercies new every morning.